Okay, Mr. Barber, it looks like we have everyone back, so I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks. Ms. Dawson, could we go back on the record, please?
Yes, sir. It is 1:06 p.m. on the record.
Thank you. And Mr. Becker, did you have anything further?
No, I don't. I covered everything in my outline. I appreciate you coming back to me though, but I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. We'll go to board members next, and the order will be member Teachout, member Merman, member Walsh, member Holmes, and Chair Foster. So member Teachout, do you have questions for Eric? Looks like she's having some problems, so I'll go to you, Mr. Merman.
Great. Eric, thanks for the clear walkthrough this morning of things. So I have a smattering of questions that kind of came out of this morning's testimony, and then a few others. So they're going to be a little bit sporadic for a minute, but I don't think we necessarily need to refer to the exhibit, but my notes from this morning, I have exhibit 19, page 3, which is talking about GLPs and GLP-1s. And I guess my question isn't specific to that exhibit, but you mentioned when you were considering the allowed amount, you don't have rebates in that amount. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When you consider the pharmacy trend, do you include rebates in the pharmacy trend?
We typically will trend the pharmacy rebates at the same allowed trend. So the allowed trend will be the utilization and unit cost, and then rebates are expected to be a consistent percentage of the allowed claims unless we have an understanding from either our contract or from other information from our PBM where we expect rebates to increase or decrease over from the experience period to the projection period.
Okay, and historically have the rebates been a pretty stable proportion of the farm? I guess, sorry, what you're trending the rebates as a percentage of the trend of the allowed amount?
I will answer, and you can tell me if this is what you're asking. The rebates have, over the course of the recent past, been a pretty consistent percentage of the overall claim expense.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I guess what I was trying to figure out in the discussion about the risk transfer payments, how do you consider the membership growth that you all are experiencing in how you think about the risk transfer payments?
Yeah, so how we have historically approached it in both states has been that the overall goal of the risk transfer is to set the claim cost such that the average member's risk is represented. And so, and to give an example, we're growing in membership from 2025 to 2026 as MVP. If we were to reflect that membership growth, then that would be disconnected from the underlying claim cost that is in 2025. So our goal is to take the 2025 claim expense, say, what do we think that actually is for the entire market, not just for MVP's specific members, and then trend that forward to 2027. Now, there are instances in which we think that the overall market morbidity would change, right? Enhanced APTC expiration would be one of those, where we think that the overall market might get healthier or sicker, and we may need to account for that. But overall, we're not accounting for membership growth or membership losses explicitly in our risk transfer because we truly believe that it should be reflective of the experience period data in order to sort of normalize the claim cost within that time period and then move forward trending from there.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Mr. Carnady mentioned something, and I won't ask Mr. Carnady to speak about it, but you were talking about prior authorizations and that removing prior authorizations reduces delay and potentially getting, I think he said sort of that imaging, but some sort of test or procedure. Would you agree with that?
I don't have specific timeframes. I can't speak to exactly how long that would be, but in general, yes. A prior authorization, an extra step in obtaining care would necessarily lead to a delay in that care.
Okay, so that was my next question is, does a prior authorization actually lead to delay?
I don't have the specifics. I wouldn't be able to answer whether it's minutes or hours or days. I'm not entirely sure, but presumably any additional layer within the sort of flow of obtaining a service would lead to a delay.
Okay. So you talked about MVP expanding access to women's health, and I appreciate the focus on sort of the full spectrum of a woman's life and the healthcare services that person would want to or should be able to have access to and get. In Vermont, we have some complexities with childbirth services, and when I look at the RAND pricing for childbirth services in Vermont, the rates are typically, as compared to national comparisons, the rates of things like CT and MRI are far higher than childbirth, or all outpatient is far higher than childbirth. And given the challenges with access to childbirth services in rural areas, how does MVP think about their payment strategy to hospitals regarding maintaining access to services for your members?
So I can't speak specifically to the specific contractual agreements to determine whether or not we actually make that a priority or not. So I'd have to go back to our network team and try to understand that a little bit better, but I could certainly follow up and provide that information.
Is that something, when you look at contract negotiations with provider hospitals in Vermont, is that something you think about and consider as trying to ensure there's access to those essential services, or at least they're being appropriately compensated?
Yeah, I would say that that's part of the calculus in doing the negotiation would be to say, okay, what services are we paying for? What services do we think are a priority? But I can't speak to the specifics of contract negotiations.
Okay, I'll come up with a written question and follow up for that.
Okay.
Right at the beginning today, when Mr. Carney was introducing you, he said that, and I think you agreed to, that you have significant knowledge in Vermont healthcare cost drivers. And I was just wondering if you could just lay out what are the 3 or 4 biggest cost drivers for healthcare in Vermont.
Yeah, we've spoken extensively about pharmacy. I do think that is a big driver in terms of the overall trend over the past few years. Another one is particularly outpatient services. So I think we discussed this maybe last year, and we may have even provided some follow-up data on it, but there is a much higher utilization of services in an outpatient setting in Vermont than in New York. And those costs are actually higher than in totality than we experience in New York. So some of that, I would say that that's also a significant driver. Now, whether or not I can speak to exactly how or why that might be resolved, I'm not sure I can, but I can point to that as one area where a lab and imaging service that's being done in the outpatient setting is necessarily more expensive than one that's done not in an hospital outpatient setting. And so that's another significant driver. I would say that those are probably the 2 biggest drivers of overall healthcare costs. And I'm specifically speaking to in comparison to the other market that we operate in. I can't necessarily speak to overall across the entire country.
What do you think MVP could do about, or why do you think Vermont has higher pharmacy trend compared to your New York business, and what do you think MVP could do, or state regulators or others could do about it?
That's a difficult question to answer. I'm not sure. I haven't done an analysis of specific, like, let's say, segment members into specific populations between New York and Vermont to say, is it with at any given age, is there more utilization of certain drugs or others? So it would be difficult without that to sort of pinpoint on saying, like, hey, here's one specific class of drugs, for example, that are much more heavily utilized in Vermont and New York, and how can we build a strategy around reducing that? So that would be an analysis that could be done. and would provide at least a framework or an understanding of, hey, what do we think the worst, the most disparate elements are. A lot of it is, I mean, what I'll say is in general, there are not a ton of pricing differences, or not a ton of unit cost differences between pharmacies in Vermont and pharmacies in New York. So it really would, higher costs would necessitate higher utilization among those drugs. What MVP could do, we can use utilization management tools that we've talked about. We could change our formulary, try to maybe steer members into utilizing certain drugs. But as we've talked about before, we have to be delicate with that and balance affordability with also abrasion. It's certainly difficult for people to hear things like step therapy, right, where they have to take a certain drug before they can do another drug. And we have used those tools in the past, but I don't know that we would want to be more strict, for example, in Vermont than we would in New York.
Do you know if your rebate percentages are similar in Vermont as they are in New York?
Yes, our rebate contracts are similar for both states.
Vermont has a lot of 340B pharmacies. Do you think that, which my understanding is changes sort of the rebates that you can get through those medications? Does that have an impact on that pharmacy trend?
I haven't looked at the impact of 340B hospitals specifically on the drug trend.
So on Exhibit 28, which we've brought up a lot, this is the sort of the July 17th updated rate increase summary table. I just want to clarify from my understanding, this is the bottom row on this. The hospital budget assumption were the hospital budgets as submitted by the time that could be, there were a few that were missing, but the ones that were submitted before this July 17th is how and it's based on the submitted budget, not on the Green Mountain Care Board guidance. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we took out on the website, there's rate decomposition workbooks that are published by the Green Mountain Care Board, which detail the underlying assumptions within the hospital budget, specifically the commercial rate ask. We populated those for all of the hospitals, and then we determined what the resulting trend would be, and then what we would expect the premium rate increase would need to be for those individual hospitals.
Okay. All right. All right, let me just get to my first. These binders are a little bit unruly. Okay, let me go to Exhibit 1, page 84. And this is really, for my understanding of this, more than I think a specific rate adjustment question. But when we look at this, experience period scripts per thousand, can you say per thousand people, per thousand members, I assume?
Yes, this should be per thousand member years. So I guess to say it a little bit differently, 15,316 generic scripts per thousand means that an average member receives about 15 scripts for every 12 months. So a little over one per member per year.
Okay, so these totals are the per year.
I believe that is the case, but let me double check on that. Okay. I can take that back.
Just one thing that was striking to me is that if you have 15,000 generic prescriptions, translates to $18 allowed PMPM. 1/10 of that for brand prescriptions relates to $90 PMPM, and 2% of that, is that right? Like roughly is $111 PMPM for specialty, and the massive impact on specialty medications on driving this pharmacy PMPM. But this allowed amount does not include rebates, is my understanding as well.
That's correct. Yes.
And do we have rebates on this table? I don't think I see it, but projected rebates is 105. So the rebates is almost not quite half of the total allowed amount.
Yeah, down at the bottom of that experience period table, rebates PMPM are $81 relative to 200. So like around 30% of the allowed cost.
I see projected RX rebates is $105 in the second to last line. I'm sorry, which?
Sorry,
where's that?
just up above that where you were looking at the experience period scripts per thousand. If you go down like about
Oh, I
10
see.
lines,
Yep.
you'll see.
Okay. All right. Yep. Okay. I see. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to sort of make sure I understood that table. Okay. In Exhibit 8, sorry, let's go to Exhibit 10, page 3. And when you get there, would you just, for people who don't have the ability to sort of follow along, would you just describe what this table is?
I'm sorry, Exhibit 10, page 3.
Sorry, page 4, my bad.
Page 4. Okay.
There's no
okay.
table on page 3. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry. So this is taking the historical data for this is the individual market in particular from 2023, January of 2023 to March of 2026. The columns include inpatient days, outpatient visits, which includes all outpatient services that were being done in the outpatient setting. And then the next column is operating room visits. So this was specifically services that were designated as outpatient surgery. And then the columns are the allowed dollars for those days for inpatient, the allowed dollars for the outpatient visits, and the allowed dollars for the operating room visits.
Okay, and these are all outpatient surgeries.
Yes, operating room visits would specifically be outpatient surgery.
Sorry, for the OR service. Okay,
Yes.
so
Yep.
let's just start with looking at the OR visits. The numbers kind of fluctuate a bit, but look roughly stable. 258, 223 are the first few months, 197, 224, but there's a few before that at the beginning of the year. But the OR allowed looks nearly double. So that would, I mean, I'm sure I did not do any sophisticated calculations with this. It looks like maybe in the middle, the OR volumes go down again, but it looks like, would that be that the price per surgery has gone up pretty substantially? Maybe not doubled, maybe it's 70% up or something during this time.
Yeah, so this is I think you're speaking of like the bottom 4 rows really is where it seems like it jumps. Is that a fair?
It certainly jumps substantially. It's sort of in the 500 to 600, maybe even starting in the middle of last year.
Yeah. So I can't speak to specifically the middle of last year. I would have to take a look at the reasons for that jumping in the middle of last year. The last 4 months, I believe we in the previous response that we provided some language around IBNR, and this is a kind of a nuanced actuarial thing, so I'll try my best to explain it. But we set a reserve on claims that are not expected to be complete, and so we say for any given month, right? We know that we have 90% of the claims that are already paid and in-house, so we have to put 10% IBNR factor on that. Our IBNR models just do that in total, so irrespective of the type of service, and that's as low as we can get in terms of that. So in this response, we were providing IBNR was on the operating room visits at the same rate as every other claim, but we know in actuality that the inpatient, outpatient physician services all complete at different rates. So we cautioned looking at particularly the bottom 4 rows and saying this data is not complete. This has IBNR in it, so we would not expect necessarily those costs to be that high moving forward. So that is the reason why I would expect those dollars, particularly for operating room, to be higher or lower. Expect them to be higher than what they ultimately will be, but then the middle of the prior year, I'd have to look and see exactly what was driving that, whether it was facility mix or service mix or just an increase in unit cost.
Yeah, I would say looking at this, to me, it looks like the the OR allowed and the outpatient allowed, where, I mean, outpatient visits may be even slightly trending down from the beginning of 23, although the first few months of 23 look really high, and then they kind of came down and maybe slightly trending back up again. But the OR allowed and outpatient allowed, even in the middle of the end of last year, and I have not done an analysis of this, look just substantially higher. And it gives me concern that we have as unit price increases, given that the visits are kind of not what's driving it. It looks like the ratio of the allowed to the visit seems to be driving it. So I'm just want to make, understand what MVP is trying to do to manage these unit price increases, if that's what's going on here.
Yeah. I mean, we could provide more information on specific months or comparing 2025 to 2024 if you would be interested.
Well, I guess one other question I have on this is, does this vary between like GMCB and non-GMCB regulated entities, or the entities that we regulate and those that are not regulated by us? Are there price increases that are occurring that are driving this? Because high prices giving higher prices for the same thing just puts more pressure on premiums and on people. So
right. Yeah,
that analysis would be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have that in front of me, but that's something that we could provide.
Okay. Exhibit 3, page 1, I believe, is a brief, just a chart showing your RBC in the bottom of page 1 there.
Yes.
And how does MVP, I know you say that New York uses different metrics for your solvency regulation than RBC, but how do you view your RBC position? Is this a fairly strong position? Is this a weak position? Is this an okay position?
I would consider it to be an okay position. We're certainly not the highest RBC relative to our competitors, but we have multiple plans in New York that we compete with who are in various stages of going through not insolvency, but certainly being regulated more heavily by the Department of Financial Services in New York. So relative to our competitors, I would say it's middle of the pack. We're certainly not the most capitalized company, but also not the least.
Okay. On page 8 of that same exhibit, you have Vermont individual medical claims by state. And you break out the Vermont spend and the non-Vermont spend. And it's kind of striking to see the big jump in the Vermont spend from 24 to 25 with a very, the non-Vermont spend actually kind of drops in 24. But from 23 to 25, I guess you could say the pretty substantial change. What do you think is driving are your members seeking more services within Vermont? Is this a utilization thing, or what? Can you tell me what's going on here?
Yeah, I think this table was presented in total dollars, but it probably would be more helpful to view it in terms of PMPM costs, because I know our membership did increase from 2024 to 2025. So it's entirely possible that the membership that we gained in 2025 just happens to live in Vermont and doesn't utilize services outside of Vermont. It's also highly regionally dependent too. I mean, you can kind of draw a line diagonally through Vermont in terms of members who utilize much more Green Mountain Care Board services versus members who don't, specifically because of the presence of Dartmouth in New Hampshire. So it would be helpful to look at it from a regional basis before I made any specific determinations about the drivers.
Okay. Can I just confirm the CSR load that you used in preparing these rates? It's the 1.375?
I believe that's the case. It's the one that was the calculation was done by L&E and given to the carriers.
Okay. And if you used a different CSR load, would that impact your rates in any way?
It would. A lower CSR load would decrease the rate on the silver plans because of the presence of silver loading.
Would that change the overall rate, or is it just specific to that the silver plan?
in order to be actuarially sound, I mean, it should have the same overall revenue. So it should, in theory, increase the platinum, gold, and bronze rates to account for the lower revenue on the silver plans. So that would be an increase, an offsetting increase, but certainly would not be a 1-to-1. A 1% decrease in the silver load would not be a 1% increase to all the other plans. It would be much smaller in terms of the other plans.
I guess my last question is, do you think the prices that you pay at Vermont hospitals are reasonable compared to the other hospital prices you pay in your different markets?
I would have to take a look at the data before I could make any specific determination. I haven't looked at it recently to say one way or another.
That's all I have for now. I have some stuff that I would like to do in a confidential session.
Okay.
Shall I proceed, Chair Foster?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking my questions. My first one is around your debt assumptions that you were discussing earlier. And I do have a question about the term you used, new normal. Can you describe a little bit in more detail what you mean by that?
Sure. So when we're looking at, we see a large increase in 2025. As an actuary, I have to make the determination whether this is a 1-year outlier that might go back down, or this might be the new higher level of bad debt that we're going to experience going forward. So looking at the data, we made the determination that that will be something that will persist into the future. And so new normal really was a representation of whether we think this is a 1-year blip or whether this is going to persist into the future.
So what about the data makes you think that it's a new normal versus a blip?
We don't have a ton of information on the specific members that are incurring this bad debt or why they are doing so. So it's really the magnitude of the increase gave us pause in terms of suggesting that this would go down. We also looked at the data that's persisting into 2026, which helps us to sort of give us another data point to say whether we think that that was a historical outlier or not. But given the uncertainty in the market as well, we had to make a determination whether we think that that's correct or not. So we're sort of using our best judgment there to say that that's what we expected.
So would you say that this particular decision was a little bit subjective?
I would say that, yeah, we're sort of projecting everything in terms of a rate filing. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, to say what's going to happen in 6 to 18 months. But yes, this was our best actuarial judgment in saying this is what we expect for 2027.
Okay. My last question about that, there's a lot of uncertainty across the market. Do you think that there's more uncertainty now than there has been in the past few years that you've done rate filings for this market?
Well, I was not the primary actuary responsible for Vermont Small Group Individual during COVID, so I can't really speak to the amount of uncertainty that was there. But speaking before that and after, since I've come back, I would agree that this is more uncertain than it's been in prior years.
Okay, thank you. I am going to move to the next subject. I have a couple questions on your pharmacy assumptions.
Okay.
My first question is, can 1 or 2 incredibly expensive drugs or even a single script impact the trend?
I'm not sure that one single script would have a large enough impact to really impact the trend. But certainly, as Dr. Merman pointed out, 1 or 2% of overall scripts drives 50% of the cost in terms of specialty drugs. So I would say that specialty drug trend in particular, given its outsized impact on overall costs, would have an outsized impact on the trend in the same magnitude.
Okay. And can a new entrant to the marketplace, like a biosimilar on a very expensive drug, also influence the specialty trend?
Yes, that is
In the
possible.
opposite direction, in the downward
Yes.
direction. Okay. And then is one of the jobs of your PBM to anticipate new drugs in the drug pipeline and the potential impact of those on, your overall drug spend?
Yes.
Okay. And did Milliman do that as well?
I'd have to take a look and see whether they did or not. I'm not 100% positive off the top of my head, but I believe as part of their analysis, they suggested that they would or did.
Okay. Okay. I'm just curious, because there are, I mean, so what I understand is that Milliman did a more generalized pharmacy trend estimate for you, whereas what CVS might have done or what you could do on your own is very specific to your membership, your marketplace, and your formulary. Is that the difference?
I would say that Milliman did a more generalized drug trend in terms of looking at nationwide data, but they did a very specific drug trend in terms of imputing that onto the classes, the drug classes that we actually have. So it's not to say that they just looked at all of the data and gave us one number. They gave us a set of numbers behind the scenes where we used those trends, unit cost trends and utilization trends on our own specific data to determine what that trend actually looks like for our claims.
Okay. And then my last question, I can't find the page right now, but it was one of the questions that you answered for the Green Mountain Care Board. We asked you about specific drugs and if you took them into account. And I think your answer was something like, we take into account all the new drugs and all the new biosimilars and everything that's happening in the marketplace. So it's more generalized and not specific to kind of outlier drugs.
I think
That's
it's a
a
fair
question.
assumption. Yeah, I can't point to one specific drug where we said, yes, this is going to have an impact. Now, I can't speak for Milliman and how they develop their trends behind the scenes. So I can't say whether or not that they were looking at and said, hey, this one specific drug has an outsized impact on this drug class. So we'd have to go back and ask them.
Okay. And then last question on this one, would you consider GLP-1s to be kind of an outlier drug driving costs in the marketplace?
Certainly the weight loss GLP-1s were in 2025, and I think the I wouldn't necessarily say the board, but certainly overall in the state of Vermont, the landscape was changed to sort of mitigate that or to remove those drugs from the claim costs and the premium rates for 2026 and 27.
Great, thank you. And then my last group of questions is around your wellness benefit.
Okay.
We noted the extremely significant increase in that benefit. Can you talk about whether or not any member can choose to receive, qualify and receive your wellness benefit?
So it is limited to subscribers on our non-standard benefit designs. So any of the standard benefit designs, those benefit designs are dictated by the state of Vermont. So we can't include the wellness benefit on there. They're standardized and have essential health benefits. But this benefit can be offered in addition to the EHB on non-standard plans. So any non-standard plan design, the subscriber is eligible to receive it. So it's not necessarily at a member level. It's one reimbursement per household or subscriber level. So either single or
Okay.
double or family.
Okay, I understand. And then I believe you said earlier that you've not included any reductions in medical trends because people are choosing to participate in your wellness program.
That is a correct statement. Yes, we are not explicitly reducing our medical trend due to the increase in wellness benefits.
Okay. Are you aware that studies of wellness programs, not just insurers, not just yours, but generally say that they suffer from selection bias, and that the people who tend to enroll in these programs are the ones who want to or are already doing the activities required for the benefit?
I'm generally aware of those studies. Yes, I can't point to a specific one, but we've done research on whether or not the wellness benefit can be directly attributed to reducing medical costs, what it looks like for the people who utilize it, those sorts of studies. But I'm generally aware. Yes.
Okay, so can you tell me why MVP chooses to continue the wellness benefit if it doesn't have a direct correlation with reducing medical trend?
Well, I'm certainly not the decision maker in terms of whether or not we continue our wellness benefit or what our wellness benefit looks like. But I will say that it provides, as I think I said in my testimony, provides for members in ways that can't be directly measured in terms of the overall claim cost. So there are many different categories in which people want to be healthy, right? And what is considered healthy, and we're providing this option for them to take advantage of it in many different ways and ways that can't necessarily be measured.
Do you think that your customers purchase your plans because they like this benefit?
I would have to speak with our product team about that. I'm not sure if they've done an analysis on the reasons why people are selecting MVP over other plans in the market and whether the wellness benefit is a significant driver of that.
Okay. I'm just wondering if this is a marketing tool rather than a wellness benefit to attract more customers to MVP plans. And honestly, healthy customers. I think that's the end of the questions I have that are not on the confidential materials. Thank you.
Board Member Walsh.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Eric. Your endurance today is impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to ask several questions about affordability. Your confidence in the calculations and the uncertainty that you've talked so well about when it comes to the math behind this. I said on Monday, this type of it's not like weighing a rock where everyone would agree on the final answer. There's a lot of judgment, a lot of uncertainty involved. And so we are dealing with estimates. And I want to try to understand whether the rates and the numbers you put before us are the only reasonable outcome, or if they fall within a range of possible outcomes. But let me start with affordability. Exhibit 28. We don't have to turn to it. It's the July increase summary. To me, that table identifies that the final request is responsive to the inputs that are chosen to be put into it. The current rates seem to represent updated inputs. They don't seem to be some type of judgment that the prior rates were unaffordable. Would you agree with that assessment of that table?
Yes, specifically, we filed our rates, as we said, with affordability sort of woven into every aspect of the filing. And when we reduce the rates for these different, or increase the rates for these different assumptions, those are very specifically adjusting certain aspects of the rate. And those are all things which we've agreed to, that we say that is a reasonable assumption to be made and a reasonable change that will not impact the overall rates.
And you're the person that we have available to us today as the witness on affordability. Is that true?
I would say that as Gary stated earlier, we are going to be putting in more evidence through our legal team to try to stipulate and present evidence for affordability. But yes, I am the only witness that you have today.
Okay. In listening this morning, you described several types of programs and several decisions that it sounds like your contention is they offer Vermonters better value than your competitors' products and options. Did I hear that's a relative comparison? Is that?
Yeah, I can't speak to when I'm suggesting that we're adding a new program or working with a new vendor. I can't suggest whether that's actually now better than our competitors or simply bringing us up to the market in certain services. So I would say I focus less on the relativity between the two carriers and more on what we're doing, which is more than what we've done in the past or continuing to evolve over time.
I see. So relative to yourself, these are
correct
improvements. And when I first asked the question, I was asking about relative to competitors. I'm wondering about and looking for evidence of what we might consider absolute affordability. Like, how are your premiums compared to the share of household income that's required to purchase them? Or can members afford the deductible and the cost sharing when they need care? Or if a plan is affordable to buy, meaning the premiums are lower than they used to be, but less affordable to use. Would you agree that coverage could be more affordable to purchase but unaffordable to use?
I would agree in the notion that coverage could be relatively low in premium, but have cost sharing aspects to it, which may be difficult for individuals to afford when they need it.
The tables in the binder show circumstances where the net premiums meet the premium benchmark, but the deductible and the out-of-pocket expenses, some of them exceed the board's cost-sharing benchmarks by quite a bit. How do you interpret that on a absolute affordability, through an absolute affordability lens?
Yeah, we would have to stand by the calculations that the Green Mountain Care Board has done and the template as it's filed. I've suggested in the past that looking at every single plan design and every single percent of the FPL may be a difficult way to view members' circumstances in terms of affordability. An individual who may be purchasing a plan may choose to do so because they have the means to be able to afford the deductible or out of pocket for a year, right? They may have an HSA built up or something like that. So it's difficult to look at one number on the page and say this is absolutely affordable or unaffordable for every single individual in every single circumstance. But at a certain point, you have to suggest that the data that we've input and the data that's exported out by the Green Mountain Care Board is the data, and it shows what the Green Mountain Care Board has intended it to.
And my read of that from the table would be that the rates don't meet affordability standards. Is that also how you read that?
If that's the affordability standard by which the Green Mountain Care Board is set, then yes, I would have to agree with that.
Thanks for that. My next question, how confident are you that the assumptions that were baked into this filing, when we take them together, that they represent the best estimate of 2027 costs rather than a supportable set of assumptions?
I would suggest that they are a supportable set of assumptions. I mean, it's difficult to be supremely confident of anything that's going to happen in the future in any one given assumption. Certainly, as time goes on, some assumptions MVP will be wrong. I will be instantly wrong in terms of what the medical costs will look like next year, in certain ways, and some of those will be higher than expected, and some of those will be lower than expected. So we're dealing with a pretty broad range, but this is the actuarial best estimate that we have at this time.
When we look at the range for the rates that you've filed, would you consider the rates that you filed to be the lowest reasonable rate?
I'm not sure that I would consider them to be the lowest reasonable rate, but I guess it all depends on your definition of reasonable. These are the rates that we have actuarially supported with the 2% risk margin that we have in place, and anything lower than that does put pressure on that 2% margin to actually come to fruition. So what I would say is in terms of reasonable is a difficult term to define and settle on. Any lower assumptions does put the lower the assumptions, the higher the risk is that we will not meet that risk margin, and we will have unintended consequences related to that.
Let me change the word a little bit with something else that's in our statute. Would a lower rate necessarily be inadequate?
A lower rate could be an adequate rate if it were to cover all of the expected claims and provision for administrative expense and all of the things that are listed in the statute. There is a lower rate that could be adequate, but it's purely a matter of how much pressure are we putting on the impact if we are wrong.
Yeah. I appreciate that. There's a lot of uncertainty around all of these. And what I'm trying to think about what we have to do as a board is understand that there's a lot of uncertainty that you need to be prepared to deal with. And how much of that uncertainty should we, should ratepayers have to pre-fund? And so I'm trying to think through that. So this is helpful for my thinking. How confident were you about last year's filings and what you've seen so far about last year's filings? What have there been any lessons that you've taken forward from that?
I would say we were at a relatively the same level of confidence in the rates last year as we are this year. The one big sort of assumption that we didn't really have a ton of information on was the expiration of the enhanced APTCs and how those would impact the market. So sitting here in my shoes last year, we didn't have any information to say what this is going to do to the market. We just had everybody was saying, well, we think it might be this, we think it might be this, here's a reasonable range. At least now, from that perspective, we do have several months of data to say, can we gut check our assumptions that we made last year? Do we think those were reasonable? Do we think that those need to be adjusted a little bit? And I think in the case of that adjustment specifically, we did reduce our assumption for that a little bit from last year, acknowledging that there's emerging data that would suggest that was that assumption was a little bit larger than it needed to be. But there's still so much going on in the market, so much going on around the healthcare landscape that it's difficult to be any more confident this year than we were last year.
Okay. I'd like to next move to the utilization trends that were submitted. My understanding reading through the material in the binder was that your own experience produced a 1.7% utilization. And there was a granular and credibility blended method that produced about 2.4, and then a broader category method that produced approximately 3.0. What is it that led MVP to believe that the 2.4 was the best estimate?
Yeah, we felt like that was we felt like it was necessary to take into account credibility, given that the population that we have when we were looking at those specific set of services was not credible enough, and we needed to support it with external sources. So that was really the driver of trying to credibility weight our own data and fold in some information that's more broad in the marketplace. In terms of why we use 2.4 instead of the 1.7 more broad utilization trend, that one explicitly only takes into account our own data, and it also doesn't account for nuances in terms of what types of services are being used that we feel like we really need to try to account for and try to understand more, which is not just how are outpatient services increasing, but what specific types of outpatient services are increasing, and does that have an impact on the overall trend?
Is there evidence of your own internal experience being inaccurate in the past and then looking externally producing a better estimate?
I can't say that we've done what I will say is certainly there are instances when we are inaccurate in terms of our forecast. It's a forecast by its very nature. I can't say that we've done anything specifically over the course of history to say if we had used, for example, a credibility weighting with a different methodology that it would have produced a better result.
So the worry this year was that the 1.7 that came up from your own experience may be too low, and for any number of reasons, including a regression to the mean, it may be wise to err on the higher side.
I would say that's fair.
That's different than actuarial evidence that the 1.7 would be inadequate, is it not?
Yes.
Thanks. A different line of questions. In the documentation prepared for us, there's MVP's MLR is reported to be between 92 and 93%, suggesting that MVP controls 7 to 8%, or has control over that. You have discussed already for us some of the principles, some of the initiatives that you've used to try to manage utilization. But I'm wondering if there were, if you have any evidence of a return on that, what the cost of those initiatives were, and what savings came as a result.
I would have to take a look. Most of the things that we've suggested are going to be in place for 2027 are initiatives that we've just recently started or are proposing to start. So it would be difficult to say whether there is a return on investment there. We would have to look at some of the older stuff that we've done to see whether or not that actually produces the return on investment that you're suggesting.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
Board Member Holmes?
Thank you. Good afternoon. It has been a long day. I echo the resilience there from my colleague. So thanks for your clear testimony so far. I actually just have a couple of questions. This year you reallocated administrative expense growth between the individual and the small group markets to better reflect kind of those underlying costs. Do you similarly differentially allocate administrative costs by meta level, assuming subscribers in heavy meta levels or higher meta levels generate more claims processing?
We do not do it at that level of detail, no.
Have you considered it? Otherwise, wouldn't you say that your most price-sensitive bronze subscribers are effectively subsidizing the administrative costs of gold subscribers?
I would have to take a look at whether that would be an allowable adjustment to the rates to actually have the administrative costs vary by that. We could do some of it by potentially changing the administrative cost structure from a PMPM cost that's flat across all plans to a percentage of premium, which would then vary slightly the difference in administrative cost between a platinum plan, for example, and a bronze plan. But any more than that, I'm not sure that would be an actuarially supported methodology. So we'd really have to take a look and see whether that actually makes sense. Not just makes sense, but is allowable to do per rating rules.
Okay. Second question is for hospitals that are in a network, say CVMC as part of UVM or SVMC as part of Dartmouth, Hitchcock, does MVP pay for physician services at, say, I'm picking on CVMC, but it doesn't have to be CVMC, but does MVP pay for physician services at, say, a CVMC at the CVMC fee schedule only? Or are there physicians providing services at CVMC that are actually billing MVP at the higher UVMC fee schedule?
I'm not
Same
sure.
could be asked at Porter, Mount Scottney, I mean, all those, but
yeah, I can answer it more generally and say that I'm not entirely sure that is or is happening. I'd have to check with our network team. My understanding is that when the provider bills, it is associated with the TIN that they're associated with, the tax ID number. So that would be, in your example, the CVMC physician is billing at the CVMC rate rather than the parent organization rate. It's not to say that it doesn't happen. I just don't have evidence of that occurring.
if it was happening in a significant way, would it have a material impact on the medical costs for your subscribers, do you think?
That is assuming that the rate for the parent organization is much higher or much lower than the individual hospital, then yes, it could have a potential impact on the rate filing.
That would be helpful to understand if that's happening. So that might be a follow-up question. Yeah. You mentioned that pharmacy is we've talked a lot about pharmacy this morning, big driver of rising costs. Do you know if the majority of specialty drugs for your subscribers are dispensed through any one or two large retail pharmacies that have significant market share?
I would have to take a look. I'm not sure of the data in terms of specialty drug utilization by pharmacy.
Okay. I guess then my follow-up question would be, are the prices that are charged by those, retail pharmacies, how do they compare regionally, nationally, or to Medicare rates? Is that part of the drivers that we've got a monopoly dispensary effectively? That would be helpful to follow up on. So many of my questions sounds like they're more follow-up, probably because you answered so many questions so well this morning. So thank you for that. MVP operates in two different states, as we know, New York and Vermont. Can you talk a bit about the network adequacy standards in both states? What are those regulatory standards? Are they the same? Are they different? And does ensuring that subscribers have access to providers in Vermont affect your rate determinations in Vermont and here in these filings? So
I can't answer specifically. Network adequacy is not within my job purview, so I don't have an understanding of the nuances between the two states. But I would say that network adequacy would have an impact on the premium rates. To give an example, if we had to have a provider in the network in order to meet network adequacy standards that was more expensive than that, and that was utilized by members, and that would be an increase to the premium rates. But given that it would be utilized by the members, I would assume that would be a welcome thing, because the alternative would be for us to have no provider in the network in that area that people are looking to actively utilize, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess what I was in part wondering, do we have significant enough access problems in Vermont where, MVP is having to reach out to farther areas to be able to provide that adequate coverage, and it's having a significant or material impact on our premiums?
Yeah, I'd have to follow up with our network team on that question.
Okay. Thank you. Those were all of my questions.
Chair Foster.
Thank you. Go to Exhibit 19, please.
Okay.
And I'm looking at question 18.
Okay.
And this describes some of the efforts to ensure primary care access, steer customers to affordable care, and to steer customers away from hospital outpatient services that are high priced. Are there any metrics that you can share in terms of how successful MVP has been in connection with these strategies?
I would have to check with our clinical and product teams. They would be the primary ones who would manage that data.
Are you able to today or in follow-up describe the impact on these rates of these steps that have been taken?
Provided that we have the data that would support us to be able to put a financial impact on those items, then yes, we could describe what the impact on premium rates would be due to these changes.
Are there any goals or benchmarks that you are trying to achieve through these steps?
I would certainly say that there are goals, but I think I've already testified probably to those more general goals of trying to enable better care for Vermonters. I can't speak to any specific metrics that we would say, yeah, we're seeking to have X more providers, or Y percent more providers within a given service area.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting at. How do you ensure that these strategies are more than words on paper and that they're actually impactful to the rates? For example, if you're trying to steer customers away from high-priced hospital outpatient services, how do you track that to see if it's working, and how do you iterate from there to ensure that it does?
That's a fair question. It's just not information that I have today.
All right. I will note those for follow-up. And my point here is just generally, as I said at the chair of the Green Mountain Care Board, there's a lot of effort and talk, and often we don't see it translate to success. And I want to make sure that every regulated entity that we deal with that is working hard and earnestly in a very good fashion is really being assiduous to the outcomes and tracking them. All right. Thank you for that. I will go to Exhibit 3. I will ask these questions in a way that we can do it in a public session. I note that it's page 15 of Exhibit 3, which is marked as confidential. I will ask it in a way that does not get into any of the specifics. And if we need to go executive session or confidential session, we will. Some of the non-Vermont hospitals have rates that are higher than Vermont hospitals. And my question is that all due to the rental facility negotiation process? For example, Dartmouth Hitchcock, is that part of the rental negotiation?
That is not part of the rental negotiation. So some impact of this is due to the presence of a rental network. We do not have control over the unit cost increases that are in that rental network agreement. That's up to our rental network partner to say, hey, we're going to pay them X% more. We have to evaluate that agreement every couple of years to ensure that that's still the partner that we want to partner with. So that's that piece. But otherwise, I do think that there are times when we are negotiating with our hospitals, specifically MVP and those hospitals where that is driving some of that. Some of it is just due to the nuances of where those hospitals are and how we have to manage them with other lines of business, other carriers in the market. So the other states that we operate in are not necessarily as heavily regulated in terms of hospital budgets as Vermont is, which can, I would say, drive higher potential unit cost trends than others.
And so, as you know, one of the key things that we look at is affordability. What if in our judgment of these rates, we don't give you enough money for MVP to pay these higher increases at non-Vermont regulated facilities?
That would translate to a loss, provided we were not able to negotiate more strongly with those hospitals and negotiate lower rates.
Could you point to the fact that you received lower rates from the Green Mountain Care Board to tell those facilities we can't give you this higher rate, and point to the fact that Vermont hospitals are receiving less?
I couldn't speak to specific negotiations. That would be with our network team. Just to give an example, that may be easier at a hospital like Dartmouth, where a significant portion of the business is Vermont small group and individual. It would be harder at, just to name an example, hospitals in Albany, where yes, some people in Vermont do go utilize those hospitals in Albany, but we have a much larger portion of our business that is not Vermont small group and individually regulated.
Okay. And I want to go to, there's one particular Vermont hospital that has a rate increase from MVP that is inconsistent with the Green Mountain Care Board's budget order. Okay. And I wanted to ask, what discretion does MVP have to award rate greater than the Green Mountain Care Board provided in a legally binding budget order?
I think I would have to, I'm not sure if I can answer that without going into the specifics of that hospital and negotiations between MVP and that hospital. If you're asking the more general question of do we have the discretion, I think we have to weigh not just that hospital budget order, but other things that come included with that, including network adequacy standards and the ability to provide services, particularly related to mental health and substance abuse, that are necessary in order to sell products and to meet both state and federal regulations.
So, and this might be a legal question that maybe we have follow-up on, but are our budget orders less binding if you have discretion to say that, you need to pay a higher rate?
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to answer that. I would have to speak with our legal team on that one.
It seems odd to me that our budget order would be subservient to a regulated entity's view of what it should pay. Relatedly, was there any discussion of coming to the Green Mountain Care Board about whether or not to award a rate in excess of the Green Mountain Care Board's budget orders?
I'm not aware of that, but I don't manage the contract between MVP and that specific facility.
And if the Green Mountain Care Board were to not provide the additional rate needed to cover awards outside of our regulatory decisions, where does that money come from?
I think it ultimately goes into the claim expense that goes into premiums. If I'm understanding your question.
Yeah, I didn't ask it perfectly. I mean, what I'm getting at is there's an award and a rate that's not in compliance with the Green Mountain Care Board's decision. And we make these decisions because they impact rate. And so when we make a hospital budget decision, we are being very, very mindful of what it does on the affordability side for consumers in connection with the rates that MVP or Blue Cross charges its customers. And so when an insurer provides a rate that's inconsistent with ours, we've lost our authority. Our authority has been disregarded, and our whole view of what we're trying to achieve is not going to take effect. So I'm troubled that we were not noticed of this and there wasn't a request or anything like that. But my specific question is, if we review this and say this is not okay and do not provide you the money in this rate to cover that overage, how does MVP cover it?
It would have to be covered through our statutory reserves that we have. Right? Effectively, if we're not able to, if we feel like for whatever reason, the reasons that I've listed or any other reason, we have to pay a specific rate for the facility that is not funded through the premium rate, then that will be coming from our statutory reserves and will fall directly to the bottom line in terms of loss for MVP.
Okay, last question. We're seeing a number, I think Dr. Merman started alluding to this as well. We're seeing hospitals cut services here in Vermont. And I wanted to ask if there's been any negotiations between MVP and any Vermont hospitals to look at the fee schedules and adjust what is being paid for services that are in risk of service line reductions.
I'm not aware of any discussions related to that, but I'm not a party to the contract negotiations, so I would have to check with our network team.
Are you aware of any hospitals coming to you at MVP and saying, look, this service line is in jeopardy of being cut, and we'd like to negotiate a higher commercial reimbursement rate for this particular service?
I'm not aware of any of those, but I would say that would also necessitate, just given the hospital budget orders, that would necessitate cuts to reimbursement rates for other services. So ultimately, the money comes from ultimately the same pool. So I understand your suggestion. I haven't experienced it, but that would be what I would say.
No, that's exactly my point. I mean, we know that we have very, very high price services that MVP is paying, and then there's some that are lower. And the question is really just whether or not there's been any evaluation of rebalancing that so that essential services are protected. And it sounds like to your knowledge, there hasn't been that discussion at MVP, but you'll need to check with others, which I understand.
That's correct.
Two specific questions. Did Copley Hospital, Rutland Hospital, or Brattleboro Memorial Hospital come to discuss any change in reimbursement for the services that they cut relating to birthing and pediatrics?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'd have to check with our network team.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much for your testimony. It's really elucidated a lot of issues, and thank you. I have nothing else.
So I heard one board member express that they have questions about some of the confidential materials. I think the option is to.
I think that Owen elicited what I was interested in sufficiently in the public session, so I don't think I need to go further into that.
Okay. I think that makes things easier. So, Gary, any redirect? Or you're on mute.
Yes, please. Just on 2 points. Eric, you were asked on cross-examination by Attorney Becker about the outside consultant and using the outside consultant figures on projections to develop pharmacy trend assumptions. And why not use the PBM projections as in previous years because they came in lower. Do you recall that testimony?
I do, yes.
And didn't L&E, it's in evidence, didn't L&E point out in their actuarial memorandum that the PBM model tended to under project pharmacy trends in those prior years?
Yes, that's correct.
And did you find that the outside consultant relied on additional data in coming to their conclusions?
I can't say whether or not they utilize additional data, but certainly they were more forthcoming in helping us understand the data that they did use. So to me, that gave me more confidence that we actually knew that they were taking an interest in these trends and developing them with an eye for sustainability in mind.
And did they use commercial market research and their own proprietary database of claims when they considered the pharmacy trend?
That's correct.
The second question, if you go to Exhibit 22, please.
Sure.
Of the L&E memo and go to page 12. Get there myself.
I am there.
You were asked questions or challenged a bit by Attorney Becker on the IRA subsidy expiration impact, correct?
That's correct.
And he was challenging MVP's conclusions around that, correct?
That's fair.
Okay. And this page that I referenced in Exhibit 22, this is where L&E took a look at our assumptions on that issue, correct?
That's correct.
And if you look at the 5th paragraph, there's a reference that L&E made to the Wakely estimates, right?
Yes.
And you were asked questions about Wakely, but L&E also took a look at that as well, correct?
That's correct.
And if you go down to the last paragraph, in that first sentence, L&E indicated they believed a higher lapse assumption could be justified after reviewing that information, correct?
That's correct.
And is it true that a higher lapse assumption would likely result in a higher morbidity rate?
Yes, that's true.
And did L&E ultimately find that the 5.8%, going to page 13, the last sentence of this section, the 5.8 morbidity impact was reasonable and appropriate?
Yes, they did.
You may not know the answer to this, but is Attorney Becker an actuary?
I don't know the answer to that, but I don't believe he is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr.
That's
Becker,
all I-
anything further?
I don't have anything further now.
Okay, thanks. All right, then I think we can let you go, Eric. Thank you very much for a lot of testimony. And we can move on to Jesse Lucier was the next witness from Department of Financial Regulation. Jesse, I see you're here.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Do you need a minute or?
I think I can go.
Okay. Why don't you just start with your name for the record and then go ahead.
Do I need to be?
Oh, yes, thank you. Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. My name is Jesse Lucier. I am an insurance analyst at the Vermont Department of Financial Regulation. The department has submitted 2 solvency letters related to MVP Health Plans 2027 Vermont individual and small group QHP rate filings as required under 8 VSA 4026. For reference, those exhibits are numbered 20 and 21 in the binder. The opinions are effectively the same for each filing and similar to prior year letters. And I'll just review a few components of the letters. We did have a few new sections, but Mr. Bachner already reviewed those. So in the interest of time, I won't reread those. As stated in previous letters, DFR is not the primary regulator of MVP. MVP's primary regulator is the New York Department of Financial Services. DFR has not learned of any solvency concern from the New York Department related to MVP. MVP otherwise meets Vermont's foreign insurer licensing requirements. In the opinion, we referenced the 2026 actuarial memo that discussed information around sound premium rates and CTR. I think that the 2027 actuarial memos are largely in line with that and are essentially the same for the individual filing. I noted that LNE recommends not lowering CTR, and for the small group filing, LNE strongly emphasizes that reducing total CTR assumption would present a significant risk for inadequate premium rates that are not actuarial sound, and the department agrees with both of those statements. I will read the summary opinion and the impact per our letter. Under the summary of opinion, the proposed rate filed by MVPHP would not negatively impact its solvency, and the company otherwise meets Vermont's financial licensing requirements as a foreign insurer. And under the impact of the filing on solvency in its filing, MVPHP has requested the board approve an overall average rate increase of 7.82% for individual. That was 9.14% for small group, based on the entity-wide assessment above and contingent upon the Green Mountain Care Board's actuary finding that the proposed rate is not inadequate. DFR's opinion is that the proposed rate will not have a negative impact on MVPHP's solvency and will support their continued participation in the market. I know there's been discussion about updated rates, and based on my understanding, Exhibit 28 of the binder has the most recent updates, which calculate an individual rate filing of 5.59% and a 7.67% for a small group. Our opinion would not change based on the information and testimony today based on those changes. And with that, I will take any questions.
Okay, does MVP have questions for Jesse?
Ryan Long will handle those questions. Go ahead, Ryan.
Honestly, Mr. Lucier, you covered most of what I wanted to ask about, so this should be pretty quick. I believe you sat in and listened to Mr. Bachner's testimony today, correct?
Correct.
And you just recited the new rates as proposed. Did anything else that you heard today change the solvency opinion?
No.
I do note that the solvency opinion is contingent on the board's actuaries finding that the proposed rate is not inadequate. Is that correct?
Correct.
And has the department had a chance to review the board's actuaries report in this rate filing?
Yes, though that's exhibit 23 and 24.
22 and 23.
22 and 23, yes.
And did anything in that report change the department's opinion?
No.
So absent some testimony from L&E later today, that MVP's proposed rate is inadequate, the department's opinion is as stated on exhibits 20 and 21, correct?
Correct.
Just a couple of broad questions. Very broadly, why is the department concerned with carrier solvency?
Solvency is one of the most fundamental aspects of, I think, in insurer protection or policy protection. The company essentially needs enough money to pay their policyholders.
And what impact, if any, would carrier insolvency have on Vermonters?
A carrier insolvency, I guess at a high level, if, as you know, there's two carriers in Vermont. So if one were to leave, that would only leave one carrier. There's always a risk that policyholders would not be paid in the event of a severe insolvency. Hopefully, it would never come to that.
Okay. And any other impacts of carrier insolvency long term?
I suppose it could affect the exchange in long term. I don't know what that would look like if one or multiple or both carriers were unable to participate.
I'd like to draw your attention to the last paragraph in the department's opinion, and let's just go with exhibit 20. We'll just stick with that one. Right before the 3 asterisk break at the bottom of the page, which starts with the word finally. You see that?
Yep.
I don't want to characterize what the department is saying here since we can all read it, but can you just briefly paraphrase it or explain what the department's getting at in that paragraph?
I can just read it if that'll probably be more clear. Finally, it is noteworthy that there are just two participants in the QHP market, presenting the bare minimum in terms of competition. Losing either one would have significant consequences to the market. The two insurers have different primary regulators, different relationships, and history with the Vermont market, and very different sensitivities around solvency related to their participation in the QHP market. As regulators, it is important to consider these important differences, but also limit instances of different treatment.
Okay, and when you refer to regulators, are you referring to both the department and the board, or one or the other?
Yes, both.
Could you please go back to page 2? I just want to look at that table. Can you tell me when you're there?
Page 2.
Thank you.
The combined QHP gains and losses.
That's the one. Can you please explain what that table tells us?
That tells us that cumulatively over the last 6 years, the MVP has lost money in the QHP market. It's the combined individual and small group.
And does that loss have a negative impact to carrier surplus, if you know?
Yes, it does.
And is that potentially a problem for the carrier and a problem for Vermonters?
Long term, yeah. Long term, any insurance company would need to either maintain or add to surplus. Obviously, a negative surplus over the long term would be unsustainable.
And is that cumulative reduction to surplus concerning for the department?
I think given the market generally, we've seen that both insurers have cumulatively lost market. So I think that goes back to the points we were talking about before, volatility, and they've been the insurance rates have been underpriced over the history of the market.
Okay, and the last part I wanted to talk about was CTR, which I think you've covered the most of that, but CTR, it's not the same thing as a profit margin. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how are the two concepts different, CTR and profit margin?
CTR, contribution to reserves, next is the addition built into a rate filing that will, generally speaking, either add to reserves or serve as a buffer for any rate components that aren't on target.
Would you agree that a reduction to CTR on general affordability is not the same as just a reduction to profit?
I would agree with that.
Okay. Has the department considered whether MVP's rate overall would still be adequate to protect solvency if CTR were reduced below the 2% requested?
I think if any part of a rate were reduced, it would increase the likelihood that a rate would be inadequate.
Has the department reviewed, for example, the adequacy of the rates after a reduction of, say, 0.5% to CTR?
Not specifically, no.
So is it fair to say that DFR or the department has not opined on whether a cut to CTR would still result in a rate that protects carrier solvency? Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's all I had, only reserving on the contingency for LNE later.
Mr. Becker, any questions?
I do not have any questions for Mr. Lucier. No.
Do any board members have questions for Mr. Lucier?
I just have a couple quick ones.
Okay, why don't you go ahead, Dave?
Thanks for taking these. So you mentioned that the MVP has had losses in this marketplace over several of the last few years. Do you know why they've had losses in these areas, in this marketplace?
No, I couldn't say specifically. As we've talked about before, the market, it's relatively small, which makes it generally more difficult to estimate what the rates should be. And I think the history of the market kind of shows that it's been volatile and just generally underpriced, given that both insurers in the market have lost money.
Has DFR done any analysis to figure out why MVP has lost money in this market over the recent years?
Not that I'm aware of.
Are you aware of how the Vermont QHP plans compare in price to other states' plans for similar products?
Generally, my understanding is that the prices are higher in Vermont, but I don't have a lot of specific information.
That's my general understanding too, just because you mentioned that they could be underpriced, but it seems like the prices are pretty high. So do you think there could be anything else leading to losses in this market other than the plans being underpriced and them being small?
I mean, underpriced in the sense that the premium dollars that have been that have come in have not been enough to cover claims and expenses. So I think maybe the question gets into, right, why are claims higher in Vermont as well? I think that kind of gets into that area.
Yep. Okay. And then is an insurer just a pass through of dollars, or do they provide other services to their members?
I think both. We've talked about this again, both Monday and in previous years. It's somewhere between 90 and 92 cents out of every premium dollar that comes in to these products goes out to pay claims, right? Which goes to hospitals, doctors, providers, pharmaceuticals. And so that sort of aspect of it is a pass through, but I do think that insurers, do their best to add services or add value. We've been talking about negotiating as well as one component of it to hopefully bring prices down.
And Mr. Long asked you a question that had DFR modeled what would happen if the CTR was 0.5% less than 2. Has DFR modeled any other CTR calculations in preparing this opinion?
No, I mean, I did note that there was a sort of quick modeling in the filing that I forget what page it was on, but it had, you know, basically what X% of CTR would translate into dollars. So I mean that's kind of a quick analysis, but we haven't done our own specific.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Any other board members have questions?
Yeah, this is Tom. I can jump in if it's all right. Dave started down a line that I wanted to follow up on. Good afternoon, Jesse. If I understood your response to Dave's question, you would not be able to answer what rate would begin to create a material solvency concern.
I wouldn't be able to answer that. I think it would point back to the actuaries, and you know what would change our opinion was if the rates were deemed inadequate, right? And that's something that I couldn't opine on.
And we have, I think it's fair to say, general agreement that the rate requests are pinpoints, but they sit within a range of reasonableness.
Correct.
How should the board understand the balance of solvency uncertainty that your department's concerned with alongside affordability uncertainty for ratepayers?
That's a good question. I think that, as we talked about before, when you have, you know, 92, 93 cents out of every dollar, right, that comes in premiums and goes out to pay claims. I'm not sure it depends on what your definition of affordable would be, right? I don't think there's a lot that the insurance companies could trim. That's a pretty thin margin to begin with. So as Mr. Bachner said, there's sort of that affordability component woven into the rates, in the sense that they are trying to price the rates to their best estimate that they can, right? And again, going back to the historical results, right? There's been a loss on these lines for both insurers. So I know that's one part of the balance. I can't really speak to the other side.
Is it that lens, if I'm hearing you correctly, is that if the rates are adequate, that is, in your view, they're consistent with being affordable?
Yes, or to put it another way, because the main driver behind the rates are claims and health costs, if the rates are deemed unaffordable, then I think that says that healthcare costs are unaffordable. And I know that's been talked about in prior rate hearings as well, right? Because the insurance rates are mostly a reflection of healthcare costs.
But if no lower rate has been formally modeled, what does the conclusion that rate would not harm solvency establish for us?
So I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yep. Sorry, not always an artful question asker, but if there's no lower rate modeled, what does the conclusion that the submitted rate does not harm solvency, what does that establish about other options in the range of reasonableness?
Yeah, that's more, I think, of an actuarial question, or you know, it's getting into that science and that art and that judgment. As we talked about before with what was talked about before, I know one specific component was bad debt expense, right? That seems to be an item that's still maybe hasn't been agreed upon, and there's a range there, right? We're seeing a straight average, and then we're seeing Mr. Bachner kind of apply some other metrics to it, right? And so I can't say which one of those would be better than the other, right? And that's where judgment comes in. And the only way to really know that number is to look back at it after it's been settled.
And I agree. There can be a lot to learn from the look back. What I struggle to understand every year, given our statute, our responsibilities, is to try to understand whether a lower but reasonable rate would be incompatible with solvency, and where that boundary is, I think, is what at least that's how I think about trying to work through this. So those are all the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lucier. Next witness we have today is Jackie Lee.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Hi.
See me?
Yes.
I do.
Yep, just give
I'm
me a
here.
second to pin you on my screen. And Laura as well.
Oh.
Okay, Jackie, I'm going to swear you in now. Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Bellevue.
Good afternoon. Jackie, could you state your full name, position, and place of employment for the record?
Yes. Hi. My name is Jacqueline Lee. I am a vice president and principal at Lewis and Ellis, and Lewis and Ellis. Sorry, that was for the three.
You've submitted reports in the individual and small group filings that we're looking at today, and those are exhibits 22 and 23. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you have any changes that you would like to make to either report at this time?
Yes, I will turn everyone's attention to exhibits 40 and 41. We received some new information after the submission of our report. We're retaining all of the recommendations that are in the report, but I would like to add a recommendation to both reports that incorporate the regulatory changes that you heard Mr. Bachner talk about earlier today regarding the blueprint, the vaccination purchasing program, and the bill back. These will increase rates 0.21% for individual and 0.28% for small group. Those numbers are found in exhibits 41 and 42 for the various filings.
I think 40 and 41, is that right?
40 and 41, exhibits 40 and 41. Sorry about that.
So you have also submitted pre-filed testimony, which is exhibit 27 in the binder, correct?
Yes.
And is the information in this document accurate and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Is there any information in the document you'd like to change or clarify at this time?
Yes, similar to what I just talked about, that I would add that recommendation for those regulatory changes. This does change the rate increase. We have estimated rate increases throughout this whole filing process, and MVP has agreed to them. So we would want MVP to verify them if all these pieces were in place. But our calculation is 6.7% for individual and 8.9% for small group.
Great. Now, that number is slightly different than what I believe Mr. Lucier was just talking about. Am I right that the difference is that you're not looking at Exhibit 28, particularly the updated hospital submissions? Is that right?
That's correct. So if we're on Exhibit 28, line 2 is all of the agreed changes. So it is missing the bad debt assumption. And then line, I guess, 3 has the regulatory changes, but doesn't have the bad debt. And then line 4 is the same thing, doesn't have bad debt and the hospital budget. So I like I said at the beginning, mine is a different number. Like we've had a lot today. But yeah, just to be clear, that would be all of our recommendations, but needing to update for hospital budgets.
Thank you. And do you wish to adopt your pre-filed testimony as part of your testimony today?
Yes.
Make sure you say that. Great, thank you. Can you explain your standard of review in both filings?
Yes, for both filings, we are using a actuarial sound definition. It has 3 components: that the rate not be excessive, not inadequate, and not unfairly discriminatory. Those are defined in my pre-filed testimony, and they've been used throughout today, but we're using those same definitions.
And do you review for affordability in the filings?
No.
Okay. Do you review for whether the proposed rates promote quality care or access to healthcare?
No.
Do you review for whether the proposed rates protect insurer solvency?
We do review the CTR, which does have an impact on insurer solvency, but we do not have a overall opinion on protecting the insurer solvency as a whole, just how much this filing has an impact, could have an impact on the solvency.
Thanks. Do you review for whether the filings are unjust, unfair, inequitable, misleading, or contrary to the law?
No.
If all of your recommendations were to be implemented, can you again explain what the ultimate projected rate increase would be?
Sure. So again, that for individual, it's 6.7. For small group, it's 8.9. And just to be crystal clear, that includes all of LNE's recommendations that are found in the report, plus the one I just added for regulatory changes. We do anticipate hospital budgets to modify that further. Mr. Brockner's talked about a current submission that he has, which also is on Exhibit 28. Based on where their hospital budget submissions are today, it is likely that the whatever the board decides to do as far as ordering would decrease those rate changes roughly 1% or more, depending on what those changes are.
Okay. Have you reviewed the other pre-filed testimony in this proceeding and listened to the testimony today so far?
Yes.
And am I correct that for the individual filing, you have now 6 recommendations and the small group now has 4 recommendations?
Yes, that's correct.
And we've heard that MVP disagrees with one of these recommendations?
Yes, they do.
Can you please tell us about your recommendation and MVP's disagreement concerning the assumption for bad debt?
Sure. I'm going to turn to the Exhibit 22, which is the L&E report. Everybody's pretty much seen this today based on Mr. Brockner's testimony today, but I'll draw everyone's attention to page 20 of Exhibit 22. It's the same in both of our reports. Well, actually, this isn't relevant to small group. So this is only in the individual. So at the very top of that page is the historical bad debt assumption or historical bad debt actuals from 2022 through 2025, but we've also included year-to-date 26. As Mr. Brockner testified and is within these documents, they have assumed a 0.75% assumption for bad debt. Mainly due to the fact that 2025 had a massive jump, and they're considering this the new normal, mainly due to experience and non-payment of premium. And while I agree there is a blip, I even think that there's a jump that's substantial that was discussed. It is new, it is emerging. We did decide to incorporate, while an immature number of 0.58 for the year-to-date number, we did include that as part of our averaging to ensure that, yes, it does look like this might be a trend going forward, and so it would not be prudent to not exclude that data or to exclude an additional data point. So we did. And we came up with a recommendation of 0.47, which is the average across there. We just believe that there's one full complete year is only one data point, but did give some recognition and some additional weighting to that by including the year to date. And there's some random variation, and we felt that this struck a balance of recognizing a potential new normal while also recognizing that for many years it was also very stable.
Thanks. After reading the carrier's pre-filed testimony and all of the materials that have been submitted so far in these filings, and listening to today's testimony, is there anything aside from the regulatory changes we discussed that you wish to add or change to the recommendations your reports make for the individual and small group filings?
No.
And do you find a 6.7% increase in the individual filing and an 8.9% increase in the small group filing reasonable from an actuarial perspective?
Yes.
And can you tell me why you find that reasonable?
Yes, after the extensive review of all of the assumptions and how they interplay in aggregate, we find that the rates are not excessive, not inadequate, and not unfairly discriminatory.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you.
Does MVP have questions?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Lee. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Another year.
Another year.
Here's some general questions. As an actuary, you try to provide actuarial recommendations that limit risk of rates not aligning with the cost of benefits provided, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you want the number to align, less risk of not charging sufficient premium, the better from your perspective, correct?
Yes.
At a very simple level, as an actuary, you look at a past year or years of data to predict and project what will happen in the following year.
Is that a question?
It is.
Okay. We do use that as a data point among other industry knowledge, or if there's any changes, we would consider those as well.
Okay. And in making your calculations about the future number, you make professional judgments about which historical data you might use or rely on, correct?
Yes.
Sometimes you will use multiple years. Sometimes you'll exclude a particular year from your analysis. It's not reliable for some reason. And also sometimes you'll give greater weight to particular years, all based on your actuarial judgment, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And you agree with me that in some cases, as an actuary, more recent data is more reliable data in predicting future events in some cases.
Yes.
Sometimes circumstances in more recent time can significantly change from prior years. And as an actuary, you need to exercise your professional judgment on whether you have a new normal and need to adjust your calculations accordingly.
That's correct.
And actuaries can reasonably differ about what data to use from the prior year or prior years, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So if you go to page 20 of Exhibit 22, I think we were just there a moment ago.
Yes, I'm on it.
And you summarized, but looking at that table at the top, this shows 2022 through 2024. I think you're saying being relatively stable. And then you have a substantial jump, using your words, in 2025, correct?
Did I say substantial? I mean, it's big, but I don't know what word I used, but yes, there is a jump. I mean, it's 0.4.
I wrote it down, but my handwriting, you never know.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
MVP this year, they're projecting 0.75 based on that. And the year-to-date 2026, the information we have so far in their professional judgment, correct?
That's correct.
And you would agree with me that the 7.5 is that MVP is using is closer to the 0.74, isn't it?
It is closer to the 0.74. Yes.
Okay, and the 0.58 for this year, understanding it's only 5 or 6 months of data, that number, the 0.58, is also closer to the 0.75 than it is the 2022, 23, and 24 numbers, correct?
Are you asking me what's the difference between 0.74 and 0.58 versus 0.58 and wait?
Yeah,
0.7,
0.75, but yeah, let me frame that more simply. The number that MVP is proposing is closer to the year-to-date 2026 number of 0.58 than those prior years. Does that
Yeah,
help?
it is closer to 0.58 than 0.34. I think that's what you're trying to ask. Yes.
And the 0.58 figure, you said it does look like a trend going forward. There, I did write down your testimony, correct?
Yes.
And you believe that your approach using the historical average is actuarially reasonable, correct?
I do. Yes.
And you would agree with me that the MVP actuarial approach, using more recent information from last year, is also actuarially reasonable. You believe your approach of using the historical average is superior, correct?
I do.
Thank you. I want to go through your memorandum and just ask a couple of questions about MVP assumptions, please.
Okay.
I think you heard some testimony earlier, questions of Eric about assumptions that MVP made. If you would please go to page 12.
Of the same exhibit, 22.
Yes, please.
Okay.
And go to the last paragraph on page 12 and read that first sentence from your actuarial memorandum.
Given, starting with given.
Yes, please.
Given the actual market lapse observed through April 26 and the Wakely estimated lapse for 26, Eleni believes a higher lapse assumption could be justified.
So would you agree with me that that's an example of MVP using a lower assumption than could be justified?
Yes.
And go to page 9, please.
Okay.
Fourth paragraph, if you could read the first two sentences, please. Starting on based on.
Okay. Based on the filed methodology, the alternative higher level service category methodology and the manual trend support and MVP's historical experience, Eleni believes a reasonable annual medical utilization trend range is approximately 2.4 to 3%. Keep going. Sorry.
Please, one more sentence, please.
While the alternative methodology could support a higher trend, the filed 2.4 assumption is within this reasonable actuarial range.
Okay, so MVP's 2.4% assumption is on the very lowest end of Eleni's range, correct?
Yes.
Would you please go to page 8, please? And you'll find a heading for medical utilization trend.
Yes.
And then that trails over into page 9. And would you, at the top of page 9, please read the first two sentences.
LNE notes that MVP has modified its utilization trend methodology over the past several years in response to prior review comments. LNE appreciates the company's consideration of new and updated approaches and believes the current methodology represents an improvement over the prior approach.
So MVP is made an improvement in how it's reviewing the rates, listening to some of the ideas that LNE's had in prior years, correct?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
And that's a good thing, correct?
It is.
If you go to page 10, please. And you were here this morning and heard some testimony about the new consultant.
Yes.
More detailed, I think, in executive session, but you heard that testimony, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that new consultant has used new methodology for calculations, has a better database, has its own proprietary database. And did you view this as generally a positive plus for MVP to be using this consultant?
Yes.
So MVP has improved its consideration of pharmacy in developing its rates, in your opinion, correct?
Yes, I have.
Would you go to page 18, please? Okay, I think I had you read a similar paragraph last year, but bear with me. At the bottom of page 18, you talk about the percentiles and the nationwide data. Would you read those sentences in the among paragraph?
Among individual and small group carriers nationwide, these figures are in the 24th percentile on a PMPM basis and on the 3rd percentile as a percentage of premium. That is, MVP has a typically low administrative cost despite not being a very large health plan. It therefore appears that MVP manage and limits administrative costs better than the typical health plan nationally.
Fair to say that the board's actuary is finding that MVP is doing a good job in managing its administrative costs.
Yes.
You go please to exhibit 23. And go to page 18, please. Let me know when you're there.
Okay.
This is the small group filing, your actuarial memorandum, correct?
Yes.
Would you please read the first paragraph at the top of page 18?
It is concerning that MVP has experienced consistent material losses in the past few years for the small group market. Actuarial sound premium rates must be sustainable without relying on cross-subsidization from other lines of business. LNE notes that persistent losses are not sustainable over the long term, and therefore a higher CTR could be justified. LNE strongly emphasizes that reducing the total CTR assumption from the filed 2.10% presents a significant risk of inadequate premium rates that are not actuarially sound.
Thank you. So that second sentence about lines of business, is it your actuarial opinion that MVP's Vermont lines of business should not be subsidized from other lines of business such as in New York?
Yes, that's correct.
And based on this paragraph, LNE is certainly not suggesting that the CTR for small group should be cut by the board, correct?
Correct.
Just the opposite, correct?
Correct.
And did you read the DFR solvency letters, exhibits 20 and 21?
I did.
In past years, I believe I've asked you, and you've generally agreed that competition in the Vermont Health Insurance Exchange is a good thing. You still believe that?
Yes, I do.
So if you go to exhibit 20, please. Let me know when you're there.
I have exhibit 20. What page?
Go to the last page, please. And that last sentence, I'll read it to you. As regulators, it is important to consider these important differences, but also limit instances of differing treatment. As an actuary, do you agree with that statement?
These differences, I honestly would have to reread what the fact that they have two different primary regulators. I don't really know how that's relevant.
Sure. Then let me reframe the question. I apologize.
Yeah, sorry.
Would you, so we're not reading a whole paragraph again. I don't want
I
to tire
know.
the board. Can you read to yourself that finally paragraph and let me know when you're done and I have a question for you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I am finished reading.
And are you generally in agreement with that statement in that paragraph?
Generally in agreement, yes.
Okay. And you would agree that losing either one or the other of the carriers would have significant consequences in the market, correct?
It would, yes.
Bear with me one second. Would you go back to Exhibit 22, page 12 of your memo, please? Let me know when you're there.
I am on page 12.
So you heard testimony earlier today and questions around the IRA's subsidy expiration, correct?
Correct.
And this document reflects that you reviewed the Wakely information, correct?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And this document also reflects that you believed L&E's higher lapse assumption could be justified, correct?
Correct.
And a higher lapse assumption would likely result in a higher morbidity rate. That's a question because it's not written down here. Do you agree with that?
It is. We say Eleni notes that a higher lapse assumption would likely result in a higher morbidity impact.
My apologies.
That's okay.
Going then to page 13, would you read the last sentence at the very top of this section?
Accordingly, Eleni believes that the 5.8% morbidity impact for the IRA subsidy expiration is reasonable and appropriate.
Thank you. So in short, L&E believes that what MVP has done on this issue, despite the challenges earlier today that were made, is reasonable and appropriate, correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions I
Thank
have.
you.
I think now might be a good time to take just a quick break. So why don't we come back here at 3:15, just a quick break and resume. Thanks. Jess, are you with us? Okay. And Ms. Dawson, are you here?
Yes, ready to go.
Okay, ready to go? Great.
All right,
Oh yeah, sorry, on the record?
yes, sir, we're on the record.
Okay. Mr. Becker, do you have questions for Ms. Lee?
I do. Just a little bit to go through with you here. How are you, Ms. Lee?
Good, thank you.
Good, good, good. I think you covered with Ms. Beliveau a bit of your pre-file testimony. LNE's review of MVP's rates focuses on whether the rates are excessive, inadequate, or unfairly discriminatory from an actuarial perspective, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the board's review is broader than LNE's actuarial review, correct?
Correct.
The board also considers affordability, access, and quality, correct?
Yes.
In your pre-file testimony, you explained that LNE uses different levels of review depending on the magnitude and materiality of an assumption, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. For assumptions that are material, LNE often performs an independent calculation and detailed analysis, correct?
That's correct.
All right. For assumptions that are less material to the rate, LNE may use the information provided by the carrier to assess whether the assumption is reasonable, correct?
Correct.
So when LNE says that an assumption is reasonable and appropriate, that does not necessarily mean LNE has independently recreated the assumption from the ground up, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it also does not necessarily mean the carrier's selected assumption is the only reasonable assumption, correct?
Correct.
All right. So I'm just going to focus on three things that we've been discussing today. The first one, the GLP-1 PMPM, the $4 experience or $4 PMPM charge that's built into these rates. This assumption has a relatively small rate impact compared with medical trend or pharmacy trend overall, correct?
Correct.
So this is the kind of assumption LNE independently recreated, or it's the kind of assumption where MVP requested more information and simply assess the reasonableness of what MVP selected?
The latter. We used the data that we received. We did ask a lot of questions around that, so we did get more data than what was originally provided. So it was, kind of not on the. We didn't do as much to. We didn't do an independent calculation, so it's
okay.
in the middle of that range.
Okay. That $4 PMPM assumption is based on emerging 2026 experience, correct? There's a table, we covered it earlier today. I'm not going to be able to find it in my dreary state, but it showed MVP's experience for January, February, March, and April of 2026. Do you remember that chart?
Mildly, I speak about it more in percentiles. That's why I'm hesitating. So that's why I don't feel comfortable answering that question right now.
Okay, all right.
But yes, it is. I mean, all of their information is based on very recent emerging experience. The exact dates, I'd have to find it. But yes, this is a new or newer drug that's come on the scene in the last couple of years. And it's the difference with the GLP-1s that's been more impactful is it's used for indications outside what it was originally approved for. Which is why it is, and because of their cost, that's why they were drawn out, and they started drawing them out in 2024 experience. So that's about how long they've been around.
Okay.
Materially around, let's put it that way.
Sure, that's helpful. LNE, in reviewing MVP's assumptions built into this filing, you understood that MVP had changed their coverage for weight loss GLP-1s beginning in 2026, correct?
Yes, 2026.
So the board and LNE, all of us, were looking at this new coverage environment and limited emerging experience, correct?
Yes.
LNE found MVP's $4 PMPM reasonable, correct?
Yes,
But L&E did not conclude, or at least I didn't read that you concluded that that $4 PMPM was the only reasonable assumption that the board could use, correct?
correct. Yeah, we did not say that.
Okay. If the board selected a somewhat lower GLP-1 PM assumption based on the same emerging experience, that would not necessarily make the rates actuarially unsound, correct?
I would have to see it and perform that analysis. I think it could, but I will say that these are very expensive drugs, and I don't know exactly where that $4 PMPM landed in the realm of reasonable. So,
Thank you. I'm gonna take us up to pharmacy trends as a whole. L&E did not recommend an adjustment to MVP's filed pharmacy trend, correct?
we did not.
And pharmacy trend is a material assumption, correct?
It is.
L&E did request additional information from MVP about the consultant's methodology, correct?
We did.
But you did not, that I could see, and I don't know that, you did not independently recreate MVP's filed pharmacy trend, correct?
We did not.
Okay. For individual market, MVP filed a 13.7% annualized pharmacy trend, correct?
Yes.
And for small group, that number was 13.9%, correct? And
Correct.
it's Exhibit 23, yeah, page 9.
I
if you
got
need
it.
that.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct.
Yep. Okay. And this was information you requested. What were the PBM model trends for this year? And we've heard this already today. The PBM model trends were 8.2% individual and 8.3% small group, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
L&E did not recommend MVP adopt the PBM model because MVP's PBM projections had historically under-projected actual pharmacy trend. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now here I do want to look at the table that you provided in Exhibit 22, page 11. So this is the historical allowed RX trends table. Looking at that historical table, the actual trend from 2023 to 2024 was 10.6%, correct?
10.6. Yes, that's correct.
And the actual trend, excluding GLP-1s, from 2024 to 2025 was 12.5%, correct?
Yes, it's only excluding the weight loss GLP-1s.
Excluding
but
weight
yes.
loss GLP-1s. Okay, thank you. Yep. Which were the ones that MVP is no longer covering this year. That was the change, right? To exclude weight loss GLP-1s.
That's correct.
Okay. So L&E's report says MVP's selected 13.7% trend is not considered unreasonable because it falls between the 12.5% year-over-year trend, excluding weight loss GLP-1s, and the 4-year average, excluding weight loss GLP-1s, which is 15.6%, correct?
That's correct.
But L&E did not identify 13.7% as the only reasonable pharmacy trend assumption, correct?
That's correct.
A 2-year average is a tool that actuaries sometimes consider, correct?
Yes.
The 2-year average here, excluding GLP-1s, would be less than MVP's filed 13.7%, but higher than the PBM's 8.2% and 8.3% trend, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now this final section I'm going to take you through, this is dangerous. I'm reacting in real time to the testimony today, and it's not strictly in my notes, so this could go badly. I want to talk a little bit just very quickly about the morbidity impact related to the loss of APTC. Would you agree this is another example of a material change to, or a material assumption built into the rates, correct?
Correct.
But this is not something that you would have been able to do a recreation of MVP's calculations, correct?
No, we are not able to do a full recreation. It's a very complex assumption, but they did give us a lot of data so that we could play around with the general assumptions, but I could not fully replicate this assumption.
Okay. And furthermore, this is also the first time something like this has happened, right? This is new for everyone.
Correct. Yeah, we've never had a loss of subsidy. I mean, we've had an increase of subsidy, but we haven't had a loss.
Okay. So Exhibit 42, this is a report from Wakely. It sounded like you were familiar with this report. You had reviewed this report, who paid and who stayed. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay. So you're familiar then that they did analyze state-based exchange states separately from federally facilitated exchange states, correct?
Correct.
And if I could just bring you to Exhibit 42, page 14. This is Table 5. The title of this table is Estimate of Potential 2025 to 2026 Market Enrollment Reductions. So we've been talking about something called a lapse rate, right? Or a lapse assumption. That's what this table is. Wakely is presenting their lapse assumptions or their lapse estimates in this table. Is that your read of what this table is?
Yes.
Okay. And for state-based exchanges, they identified a low of an 11.8% lapse rate and a high of a 21.3% lapse rate. Correct?
Yes.
And indeed, that is higher, 11.8, even on the low end, that is higher than MVP's assumed lapse rate of 9.7%, correct?
Correct.
And then if we were to switch or flip over to page 21, and this is Table 12, estimated morbidity change 2025 to 2026. And this is where Wakely provides their range of morbidity lapse assumptions based on overall disenrollment. What Wakely estimates the morbidity impact will be in these markets, separated by state-based exchanges and federally facilitated exchanges. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
And they identify a range on the low side of 1.5% and on the high side of 4.3% for state-based exchanges, correct?
Correct.
And despite assuming a lower overall disenrollment impact, MVP selected a morbidity impact that was above Wakely's state-based exchange estimate, the higher end of that estimate, correct?
Yeah, I would tweak the word selected. They calculated it from their data, but yes, it is outside this range.
Okay. Well, I think that went all right. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Take questions from board members, starting with Board Member Walsh.
Sure. Thanks. And just one question. I think it's a follow-up to something Mr. Becker raised. And good afternoon, Jackie.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. Would a rate below your recommendation necessarily be unsound, or could it be a reasonable rate that allocates more uncertainty to MVP as opposed to ratepayers?
Obviously, we'd have to quantify how much lower, but yes, there are rates that are lower than what I recommended that would be considered reasonable.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Member Holmes, do you have questions?
I do not, thank you.
Board Member Merman?
Yeah, just one clarification, Jackie. The rates that you have, the recommendations that you've given in these rate suggestions or recommendations use the do they use the CSR loading factor of the 1.375?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Would changing the CSR load factor have a significant impact on the filed rates, either up or down? Or is it
Yes,
only...
it would have
okay.
it would have a significant impact, particularly on the silver rates. But and then consequently to the gold and silver. I think Mr. Bachwerner noted already that total revenue would have to stay neutral. But the hardest hit would be those silver plans. And making them definitely less attractive. You would also have some other losers in that. If the load was taken away, and that would be anyone receiving a subsidy. The subsidy is based on that load. And if it was taken away, anyone receiving a subsidy would be hurt.
So if we were to use the alternative CSR load factor that was mentioned in your memo, that would sounds like that would that impact the subsidy people receive?
Yes, it would. Subsidy is based on the second lowest silver plan, and the load is directly applied to the silver plan. So any reduction in that would reduce subsidies.
That's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. I had to turn my camera off. I'm having some connection issues. So, Member Teachout, did you have questions?
No, I don't. Thank you. Appreciated Jackie's testimony, but I don't have questions.
Thank you.
And Chair Foster?
None, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Ms. Belleville, did you have any redirect?
No redirect, thank you.
Can everybody hear me okay? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. And God damn it.
We heard that, Mike.
I'm gonna say strip that from the transcript.
Yeah, I would move to strike.
Yes, let's strike that. I apologize. It was telling me I was offline. So, Mr. Becker, please call your first witness.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Fisher. Hi, welcome. Are there specific thoughts about the filings or the public comments that you would like to share with the board today? Does he need to be sworn in?
Yes.
It does. Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody participating in this. It is indeed a slog, these hearings. I am not going to repeat all of the things I said on Monday, even though they do apply here. But I am going to speak. I do want to just emphasize again, sort of, this is a little bit my evolving thinking about affordability. I have always thought about it and talked about it, and I think many of us think about consumer affordability in social justice terms, fairness terms, progressive ideals. And It is. I'm not stepping away from that one bit. But as I think about this moment and what's in front of us, consumer affordability is a necessary factor for the business model, the health insurance business model to work. It's a business model factor. Without enough consumer affordability, coverage falls apart. And without coverage, our healthcare financing system, without enough coverage, our healthcare financing system falls apart. And I know I'm saying the same thing that we've always said, but it's just in this moment, with the tremendous challenges that are in front of so many Vermonters, more and more Vermonters, that has a new meaning for me. It believe it or not, pushes consumer affordability even higher in my mind, competing with solvency even. A solvent rate that prices too many, whatever that magic number, Vermonters out of the system, does not serve us and will contribute to a collapse of our healthcare financing system. And I know it's my role to come and say the sky is falling. I probably do it every year, but I'm afraid that that is what we're seeing. So I wanted to emphasize that, and I'll say, I did say this yesterday, I'm going to say it again. Of course, we would ask the board to agree to the lowest rate possible to maintain solvency, despite what I just said. And I recognize, we all recognize that the major tool that the board has is the cost of care in the hospital system. And so I'll say again that the -1% commercial rate in the hospital budget guidance may not be enough of a reduction to maintain the functioning of this system. I say that with full knowledge of the pressures that that puts on our providers. But it is the tool that the board has to both maintain a solvent rate and to take a real bite out of the apple, improve affordability for Vermonters. So I hope you'll consider that. I hope you will consider in your deliberations the amount that we raise in insurance rate review in the rate cases, and even if that leads to an average hospital budget commercial rate that is below guidance. I will at least just mention on another topic. I want to at least mention what I mentioned on Monday, the CSR load. I appreciate Member Merman's questions just now. I think that the public comment you got from Stan Dorn is important, and ask the board members to take some time with it and feel a little, it's unfortunate, I'll say, that we find ourselves in contested rate cases as the opportunity to talk about something that is a market-wide decision. And so, but that's where we are. So it is my hope that the board will stick to its guns, stick to its CSR load. And with that, I think that's all I have. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Does MVP have any questions for Mr. Fisher?
Yes, please. Hi, Mr. Fisher. How are you?
Excellent.
Good. Now, as I understand it, you're not an actuary, correct?
That is correct.
And the HCA has an opportunity each year to hire your own expert actuary. I think you've done that 1 or 2 years, but have not in other years, including this year, correct?
Incorrect. We do hire an actuary. We use an actuary every year to help us understand the rates, to help us understand the filings and consider arguments.
Oh, I did not know that. So that actuary isn't disclosed as an expert in our expert disclosures, is it?
We don't bring that actuary to, you're correct, other than a few years ago, a number of years ago, we don't use that.
Right.
that
So
actuary as an expert.
MVP doesn't have an opportunity to ask that actuary questions, or you're not presenting them as an expert. Here, it's
We are
just
not.
lawyers for the HCA, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Becker is a lawyer, not an actuary, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Would you agree with this statement? It is a fine balance to protect the insurer's financial stability while keeping premiums low and affordable for Vermonters.
In a normal year, I would say yes. And I recognize
Let me ask you, I'm sorry, finish your response.
I recognize the challenge of this moment is a little bit of what I was just speaking to. A fine balance that maintains solvency that results in too many Vermonters, and that's a judgment call, who are priced out of the system does not serve us well. And
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Given the late hour, I'm just going to move this along so we don't have to put things into evidence. Just tell you that I went to your website and I pulled 3 articles on the Vermont Legal Aid website from Vermont Digger, Vermont Public, and 7 Days where you're quoted. So I could pull all of those out, but I just want to ask you the quotes and then we can go from there, okay? So I would represent to you that you said that. Do you deny saying that in March of 2026, Vermont Digger?
no, I don't deny saying that, probably then and many times in the past.
Thank you. Would you agree with the statement that it is good that the insurer has a good cushion so that they can comfortably pay claims, but we also don't want them to hold too much of our money because Vermonters need that money too?
Sounds like something I would say.
In an ideal world, you would like the board to be even more aggressive about reducing hospital prices, but regulators may be reaching the upper limit on what they can ask providers. This is a tough balancing point because I'm afraid if we went higher or much higher, that it would have, real immediate negative impacts on the availability of care in communities. Do you agree with that statement?
I agree that I said that.
And if this goes much further, I feel like I need to object. I mean, we're raising all kinds of hearsay statements into the record here. I understand, I think, what, I mean, Mr. Fisher doesn't have an opportunity to review these statements beforehand to know whether or not he said what Mr. Carnegie is alleging he said. So
perfectly right. It's not hearsay. It's an admission of a party opponent. I can go through the normal process, which is to ask him the statement. Do you agree with it? He'll say no, or he'll revise it. And then we'll spend 30 minutes with me putting these exhibits in front of him. And then if he still says no, we'll put him into evidence. So if you want to spend that time, I think he's basically agreeing, modifying slightly, which is fine. I only have one more statement to ask him about.
Mr. Barber.
Yeah, sorry. So was the objection hearsay or some other? What specifically
I
was the
articulated it poorly. It was hearsay, so that was the wrong objection.
Okay, one more, Gary. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. Would you agree with the statement that a clear picture of UVM Health's finances and Vermonters' use of healthcare services is unlikely to emerge until later this year as demand for care changes over time? Would you agree that you added that this year may be harder to read than usual as coverage patterns have shifted following the expiration of the enhanced affordable care subsidies, which left many people facing significantly higher premiums?
I'm curious when
April
that,
17th, it was in 7 days.
yeah. Yes. But I do have, I have to contextualize it.
Oh, go ahead. But I just want to be clear, you agree, you made that statement.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm not contesting that those are accurate. Actually, I should recognize that those are what I was quoted as saying by each of those press people. Whether that was actually what was conveyed at that time, I cannot recall. But I think the statement I just made a moment ago about the growing pressure on Vermonters' affordability is in the context of today. The statements that you read back to me that I was quoted as saying were from points in times in the past. And the picture is changing.
That's fair. So you'd agree with me that in this year in particular, there's a greater uncertainty for all stakeholders. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And that would include MVP and setting its proposed rates.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions from the board members for Mr. Fisher?
Can I just ask one silver load question? Mike, when you say maintain the silver load, I believe was the word you used, are you referring to the 1.375 load or the prior 1.48 something load? Yeah.
442. No, I am referring to I think it is guidance for this year, the 1.37. My understanding of the movement from I think it was 42 to 37 was in recognition of the actual Vermont experience. And that seems fair to me. As much as I wish it wasn't, that seems fair to me that we use the actual Vermont experience to define our silver load.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Okay, Mr. Becker, any redirect that you'd like to do?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. So I think we're ready for closing statements. Are the parties ready, or would you like anybody like a couple minutes?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, then why don't you go ahead, Mr. Carnegie?
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the board for your attention and your endurance today. My closing is going to be a little bit longer because I want to point to non-actuarial evidence. I apologize for that, but I appreciate your patience. We spent a lot of time preparing for this today, and I'd like that opportunity. Before I get there, I just want to caution the board that the HCA did not have an expert actuary testify today. Mr. Becker asked a lot of questions. His questions, depending on the answer, are not evidence. So please review the record carefully when you make your determination, because that's not evidence. The answers are, and we just want to be clear that without some expert actuary here that I can cross-examine, he's just a lawyer, just like me. We thank the board. We request that the board approve our request for a rate increase of 5.59 for individual and 7.67 for small group. The only dispute this year is between the actuaries on the rate increase amount. The 0.3 bad debt assumption reduction proposed by LNE. I think as the hospital budgets, I don't think that LNE's disagreeing with how we calculated. They just want to wait and see what the board says about hospital budgets. Respectfully, MVP's reliance on the more recent and quite concerning increases in bad debt, the new normal, is the more reliable approach in these uncertain times and less risky than L&E's reliance on older, historically accurate but stale data. MVP has met its burden as to all of the statutory criteria. As to the non-actuarial criteria, the following information is now in the record and evidences MVP's efforts to make its benefits package affordable and to promote quality and access to care. Stipulated exhibits 1 and 2, the rate filings, indicate MVP offers non-standard plans, which include a wellness benefit, which goes to affordability and quality of care, acupuncture allowance, which goes to affordability and quality of care, community outreach and education regarding all plans, which goes to access, affordability, and quality of care, and eliminated prior authorizations for imaging results and reduction to admin, going to access and quality, commit 6% of admin to quality improvement, cost containment, that goes to affordability and quality, limits risk margin to 2% as opposed to the top of the range of reasonableness, 5% or more, that goes to affordability and access, remains a participant in the market, that goes to access and affordability, sets an actuarially sound rate to support plan designs, goes to access and affordability, exhibits 3 and 4. Objection 1, question 7, sets trends based on recent information, goes to access. Question 11, relies on outside consultant, commercial market research to better align RX trends, goes to access. Question 18, elected to fully cover insulin, goes to affordability and access. Exhibits 6 and 7, objection 2. Question 1, takes steps to ensure Vermonters' access to critical behavioral health services, goes to access. Exhibits 8 and 9, objection 3. Question 6E, sets morbidity assumption within the range of reasonableness, that goes to affordability and access. Exhibits 10 and 11, objection 4. Question 1, utilize more conservative standard to assess trend credibility, goes to access. Question 5, take steps to reduce losses in Medicare Advantage line, goes to access. Exhibit 14, responses to HCA questions. Question 5, impact of medical and pharmacy trends through contracting, goes to affordability. Trend estimation is balanced, not at the top or the bottom of the reasonableness range, goes to access and affordability. Reduced risk margin, more than 72% of filed QHP plans, goes to affordability. Lower administrative costs than the nationwide average, goes to affordability and access. Due to market share growth, administrative cost is shrinking as a percentage of shares of expense, goes to affordability and access. Reduced premium below federal standards by over 10%, goes to affordability and access. Exhibits 15 and 16, objection 6. Question 1, utilizing new data to improve benefit actuarial value model accuracy, goes to access and quality of care. Exhibit 18, the pre-filed testimony of Eric Bachner. Answer 16 ties rates to cost, resulting in 92 to 93 cents of every premium dollar going to pay claims, goes to affordability and access. Question 19, maintain a robust network, goes to affordability, access, and quality of care. Question 26, negotiates with hospitals, goes to affordability and access. I should be saying answer. Answer 28, encourages strong relationships with PCPs, goes to affordability, access, and quality of care. Answer 29, aligns fees to encourage PCP utilization, goes to affordability, access, and quality of care. Answer 30, providing reporting to large employers on customers not accessing PCP care, goes to affordability, access, and quality of care. Answer 32, ensures members utilize low-cost drug to treat their condition, goes to affordability and access. Answer 33, member outreach and education, goes to access, affordability, and quality of care. Provide MVP care guidelines, goes to access, affordability, and quality of care. Continues to improve provider directory, access, affordability, quality of care. Expands lower cost infusion settings, access, affordability. Answer 34, implemented medical director to reduce inpatient costs, goes to affordability. Contracted with Avalon to reduce unnecessary or duplicative lab utilization, goes to affordability. Refined transition of care program to improve post-discharge support, avoid readmission, and steer follow-up to the proper settings, goes to access, affordability, and quality of care. Contracted with Zealous as claims editor to reduce admin and medical expenses, goes to affordability. Answer 35, maintains a national network of providers, goes to affordability. Answer 36, provides case management, goes to access, quality of care, and affordability. Managing chronic conditions, managing complete and acute cases, all go to access to quality of care and affordability. Looks to evidence-based guidelines to decrease unwarranted variations in care, goes to quality of care and affordability. Use current technology to manage costs and improve affordability, goes to affordability. 39, expanded access to non-traditional providers like naturopathic medicine, goes to access, quality of care, and affordability. 39, steer members towards high quality, lower cost care, affordability, quality care, and access. Improves transparency through GIA platform, affordability, quality care, and access. Encourages and improves telehealth. All three. 40, ensures that rural Vermonters are covered and have access to medical care, goes to access. 44 through 46, promotes its well-being reimbursement program, access, affordability, quality of care. Answer 47, reduces overutilization through telehealth, which is available 24/7, regardless of location, goes to all three. Looks critically at existing programs like prior authorizations and eliminates those where cost outweighs benefits. That's answer 48, goes to all three. 50, engages in competitive bidding to reduce administrative cost, goes to affordability. And 54, ensures continued participation in marketplace through adequate contributions to reserves. That goes to access and affordability. Maintains a competitive premium position in the marketplace. Answer 67, goes to affordability. Answer 69, improves access to women's health benefits, goes to access and quality of care, including the doula benefit and Electra, which go to access, quality of care, and affordability. 70, covers insulin in full, goes to access and affordability. Works to reduce financial barriers for members with chronic conditions, goes to access and affordability. Exhibit 19, Green Mountain Care Board question responses. Number 18, expands telehealth through Amwell to include urgent care, type support, behavioral services, situational primary care, and guidance toward efficient providers, goes to access and affordability. Encourages personalized engagement through Vitality to reinforce high-value care choices, goes to all three. Leverages advanced practices providers, including nurse practitioners and PAs, goes to access and affordability. 19, expanded Avalon partnership to genetic testing, goes to quality of care and access, and integrated real-time ADT alerts into care management platforms, goes to all three. Exhibit 28, updated rate increase summary, continues to consider actuarial analysis to ensure that rates are actuarially sound, goes to access and affordability. The supplemental orders, which are confidential, which goes to our negotiations with the hospitals, and the efforts you heard today go to affordability, access, and quality of care. The MVP website, this is Exhibit 35. The link to it provides volumes of information, plan details going to affordability, listing hundreds of local physicians and medical professionals by location, plans accepted, specialties, whether accepting new patients or offering primary care, goes to access and affordability. Provider comparison tools, goes to affordability. Access to MVP's health library with information on topics ranging from allergies to genetic conditions, goes to access and affordability. Symptom checker designed to assist in making a decision whether to seek care in the
Gary,
appropriate.
do you if this is going to go on, do you just want to send us this in a document? We can look at it.
Well, I'll do whatever the board directs me to do.
Well,
Respectfully, this is a closing argument. I'm listing items. If we could have additional pages in our briefing to list all of this evidence, I would appreciate that opportunity. If not, I want to get it on the record.
As a listener trying to absorb this, like this isn't resonating with me. If I have a piece of paper, I can look at it and go through it. It's just, you're just reading something at me. It might be more helpful if you send it. If you don't have much more, that's fine. But you're trying to persuade us as judges. It might be good just to get it in a document, like an appendix.
Well,
the cross references are helpful, but I just can't really do that much with it listening to it.
May I respond?
Please.
So the issue is one of last year we were told we didn't submit enough evidence on affordability in these non-actuarial items. We have a 10-page briefing limit. This year, I was trying to have the witness focus on the other issues. This is all in evidence, but if I'm limited, I don't know if the board, I frankly didn't know if last year when that finding was made, whether the pre-file was read respectfully. So I want to get it on the record.
We read the pre-filing, which is why I've actually directed you a couple times that you don't need to read the pre-filing into the record because I read it. So I'm just saying, if you don't put it as like an appendix, if there's like a very long list of cross-references, just send us the document you're reading from. I think it's more efficient, but if you don't have much more, just finish up.
Well, you're saying separate and apart from our briefing, if we send a 3-page letter listing the balance, can we do that?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
Because then I can like look at it and this is just hard for me to, I'm not writing this down. It's just something I can reference.
Understood. And I hope you understand why I was doing this, because we were somewhat constrained. So I appreciate that, and we will do that and provide that in writing in a letter in the next week or so. Does that make sense?
I think that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
If I might, can I just look at the balance and see if there's anything else I wanted to say?
Sure. Yeah, of course. I'm not trying to cut off your argument. This just isn't, argument. If you have other argument closing thoughts, please do share them.
I think the argument, though, is that this demonstrates just how much evidence we have on affordability, on quality of care, and access of care. And it also illustrates the fact that some things in the rate filing, which come from an actuary, actually relate to access to care. They also relate to solvency. They also relate to actuarial issues. But the import of this evidence for non-actuarial issues can't be overemphasized. And so that's why I was going through this exercise. So the board can weigh the evidence as you see fit. But we wanted to make a point this year, in particular, that this evidence, Mr. Bachner's testimony, other testimony you heard, all of that evidence goes to a variety of statutory criteria. And I appreciate the opportunity, and I thank you for your patience. But we'll submit that letter within the next week. Thank you very much.
And please make whatever argument you have otherwise. If it's just, I'm just saying this listing and recitation of all this would be great in a letter. But if you have other argument and closing thoughts, please do share them. We're very interested in those.
No, I think I made my point, and we can add anything in that letter. So I appreciate it.
Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Barber, Chair Foster, members of the board, Mr. Carnegie. I'll be brief. The HCA's position remains the same as it was at the start of the day. MVP's filings reflect real pressures, claims costs, hospital costs, pharmacy trend, federal policy changes, market fragility, and the need to keep these markets stable. The HCA is not asking the board to approve inadequate rates or destabilize MVP. But adequacy is not the end of the analysis. Vermont law also requires that the rates be affordable, and the record before the board shows that affordability remains the central problem. And to pause on that notion for a second, the record before the board, I just want to emphasize that the record here is voluminous, and my cross-examination today was tied to the record. So I would propose that the theories I brought to you in cross-examination brought you to places in the record that are evidence. But I'll move on. The record shows that affordability is a central concern, and for Vermonters, coverage is too expensive to buy. For many more, it is too expensive to use. The affordability templates in the record show that. The public comments show that, and Mike Fisher's testimony explained why that matters. Affordability is not an actuarial abstraction. This hearing also confirmed that many of the assumptions in this case involve judgment. MVP's assumptions may often fall within an actuarial range, but that does not make them the only reasonable assumptions. It does not make them the lowest reasonable assumptions, and it does not mean the board must accept every carrier selected assumption or even all LNE approved assumptions when lower reasonable choices are supported by the record and better serve affordability. That is true for the enhanced APTC morbidity assumption, where Wakely provides us a 1.5% to 4.3% morbidity impact for state-based exchanges. It is true for pharmacy trend, where we have a 2-year average of MVP's own experience that supports a lower reasonable trend. It is true on a smaller scale for GLP-1s. And it is true for benefits and tools that may have value but have not yet been shown to produce measurable premium relief. Most importantly, the record confirms that hospital budget action matters. When MVP updated the filing for hospital budget submissions, the requested increases came down materially. That demonstrates the importance of the board's hospital budget authority and its fiscal year 27 commercial reimbursement guidance. The final rates should reflect the board's fiscal year 27 hospital budget guidance at least, not merely the hospital's initial submissions. So the HCA's request is straightforward. Adopt L&E's recommended modifications, require final rates to reflect the board's fiscal year 27 hospital budget guidance, scrutinize assumptions where the record supports lower reasonable choices, continue using supplemental orders to push for concrete progress on affordability, risk sharing, pharmacy costs, and measurable value for premium payers. These markets are fragile and they matter, but stability cannot mean accepting unaffordable rates year after year. Stability also requires making coverage affordable enough that people can stay in the market, use their coverage, and see value in what they are paying for. This proceeding will not solve Vermont's healthcare affordability crisis, but it is one place where the board can act. The HCA respectfully asks that the board approve rates that are adequate but no higher than necessary, and we look forward to providing more concrete recommendations based on the testimony today and our post-hearing briefing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for the hearing. I've been taking notes, and I think we've all been taking notes on